Hi everyone and welcome to the first video by Polymath Tabletop, the channel where we try and excel at all aspects of tabletop wargaming. In this video, we've got a 2000 point game of Age of Sigmar, Henry with his Seraphon up against Gary with his Ossiarch BoneReapers. So without any further preamble, let's get to it. Okay, let's get straight to it. The battle plan that the guys are playing today is taken from the General's Handbook 2021 and is Feral Foray. There's six objectives on the table, and you can burn your opponent's objectives if you can clear it out and get your guys close enough. As you can see here, they've already started deploying. Gary won the roll for the deployment and started deploying first. So he's playing Ossiarch BoneReapers in the Mortis Praetorian sub-faction. His list comprises of Catacross, Ark in the Black, 1 unit of 5 Death Riders, 2 units of 20 Mortet Guard, and a Mortet Crawler. He's also got the Bone-type Nexus faction terrain piece. Henry's list is in the Coalesce sub-faction, and then underneath that, the Thunder Lizard sub-faction. His list comprises of a Skink Chief on Stegodon, a Slan Star Master, a Skink Starseer, a Skink Star Priest, a Skink Priest, and a Saurus Astrolith Bearer rounding out his heroes. He also has 2 units of 10 Saurus Warriors and 30 Skinks in one big unit. In addition, he's got 2 units of 5 Chameleon Skinks hiding in reserve, and 1 Bastiladon with a Solar Engine to round out his list. Comparing these two lists, Henry's list is less points, so he will get the Triumph, which he has taken the Inspired for the +1 to wound. As this game rolls out, you'll see what happens, but as you can see now, Gary has started deploying. He's mainly keeping the bulk of his units in the centre, with just his Death Riders and his Liege Cavalos on the right-hand flank. Whereas Henry has started just stashing his guys in the pyramid, so I think you can see his Skink Priest has been deployed so far. So you can see there that the catapult is behind that large piece of terrain in the centre of the table, and Catacross has gone down behind the Bone-type Nexus. Looks like Henry's put another guy in his pyramid. I believe that is the Skink Starseer. So the Skink Starseer has the Hand of Glory spell, chosen from the Skink spell law, which lets him cast on another unit and to give him the reroll once to hit. So you can see here that Gary has deployed Ark in the Black down in the bottom left-hand side of his army, defended there by the Mortet Guard, trying to keep him back. Henry has a battle regiment in his list, and you can see that he's deploying that now. You can see the Stegodon with the Skink Chief going down opposite the bulk of Gary's forces, with the Bastiladon being deployed to anchor that right-hand flank, or left-hand for Henry. Slan's going in the middle, and that piece of terrain in the middle is actually arcane as well. So that Slan is going to be casting his spells at a base +3 due to his native +1, the +1 for the Astrolith Bearer, and then arcane on top of that. You can get it to +4 with Sage Staff, so there should be a lot of powerful casting coming out of that. You can see there that the Saurus, 1 unit of Saurus has been deployed on the Henry's right-hand flank, or the upper left-hand corner of the screen, looking just to tag that objective, while we've got the big unit of Skinks going down in front of the bulk of his forces there. The last unit of Saurus is going down now, just to kind of anchor that right-hand flank a little bit more. Hopefully, I believe the tactic is just going to be trying to anchor that and stop Archon from pushing up too far over that side. So, looks like they're kicking off now. So, Gary is going first, because he finished deploying first. So he's currently just working through the start of his hero phase. He's looking to try and steal some of Henry's command points, generating his Relentless Discipline points, and then he'll go through choosing his battle tactic and heroic action. So, due to how this game plays out and what's deployed, the heroic actions are not that useful for Gary early in the game until he gets into either Henry's turn or later in the game after he's taken some damage and he wants to heal. Just because he can't use the command points, and he doesn't really want to pop the finest hour this early in the game. So he's currently just debating which battle tactic to do. He's got a few options. Savage Spearhead is a popular one. Ferocious Advance is also quite useful. But he ends up choosing Monstrous Takeover with Archon on that far left-hand objective, just due to the way that he's deployed, and he's kind of a little bit worried about Henry's shooting capabilities. So Catacross uses his command ability, which basically happens at the start of every turn, just to give pretty much everyone in his list the nice +1 to hit and +1 save. So Archon is about to start his magical onslaught. But up against that Slan, and this is where the power of that terrain piece in the center really comes into play. The Slan's at a base +2 to Unbind. So Gary getting an 8 there to cast Mystic Shield. Slan shuts it down straight away. So you can see there, Gary is just checking to see what other options he's got to go forward with, to kind of figuring out how he's going to play out the rest of this turn and subsequently the rest of the game. So Archon now trying to cast Reinforced Battle Shields. Casts it on a 6, goes up to an 8, and once again the Slan just completely shuts that down. So Gary now checking for Archon's third spell to see kind of what he wants to go with. He's still got a few options left. Ends up going for protection and then gets a miscast, takes 3 mortals, and then doesn't make any death save, taking 3 damage straight off the bat at the end of the hero phase. So you can see there that we've got the battle mat and objective markers are made by in-house. So these are available for purchase. Get in touch with us on Facebook if you wish to purchase any of these. Our battle mats are also stocked at Irresistible Force at Logan, Heretics Haven at Nambour, and battle stations in Toowoomba. So Gary moving into the movement phase now. So he's got a bit of a tough call here to make, just because Henry's list does have a lot of shooting output. And apart from the catapult, Gary's list is primarily melee, so he really will have to weather that storm to cross the field to be able to engage him and be able to put some meaningful damage into that list. So movement phase is done. Gary's decided just to bunker down. So into the shooting phase. So like we said before, the only shooting he's got is the catapult. And the catapult, for those who don't know, has 2 special shots. One of them, which he uses just then, he needs to roll equal to or over the bravery of a model. If he does, that model is removed. So he uses that, rolls the 5, and then just removes the Skink Chief on Stegodon. So that's Henry's general, one of his big hitters, and a monster that has just been taken out with a single dice roll. So Gary's scoring 5 points from the first turn. And killing off that Stegodon is a huge impact to Henry's list and Henry's game, being that it is his general and it is one of his primary damage dealers. So we'll see how he reacts to that going forward. Likely he will be playing less offensive, maybe bunkering down that little bit more, hoping to try and just do that extra bit of damage at range before he kind of commits to that melee. So we'll see what happens here. So Henry's turn is starting now. So going into his turn, he's got quite a few different options. So he can either push up really aggressively with those Skinks and Saurus. He can kind of sit back. It looks like he's just looking to see what he can do with the pyramid. He's got 4 heroes in the pyramid, all 3 of the Skink heroes and the Astrolith. So they've got quite a lot of versatility in them. There's a lot of different buffs. There's a lot of spells that can come out. So we'll see what happens going forward there. So Henry going with the heroic action for the extra CP because his general is dead, putting that on the Skink Priest. So Slan's starting off the spell casting. So Slan's also affected by Sage's Staff, so he gets up to a +4 now at the moment. Throwing out a Stellar Tempest on the large unit of Mortek Guard in the center of the table. So this spell, you roll a dice for every model in the unit, and on a 5-up they take a mortal wound. So it's very effective at dealing with hordes, less useful against small units or single models. So Gary elects to not try and dispel this one. Okay, big roll there. With 5 mortal wounds. And Gary making 1 deathless save there, so 4 Mortec go into the ground for the first blood for Henry. So Slan continues his magical domination, throwing out a Comet's Call, getting it on a 12, so not only does that make it incredibly difficult for Gary to dispel it, but it also means it will be the D6, which rolling a 4. Archon, the Mortec Guard, the Death Riders, and I believe he chooses the Catapult as well. So, Comet's Call, for those who don't know, is D3 damage to D3 units, but if you cast it on a 10 or higher, then it becomes D6 units. So, just putting some spread of mortal wounds throughout Gary's army there. Just chipping a couple of wounds off everyone. The big important thing there is it looks like the main Mortec Guard unit, the Death Riders and Archon as well. They seem to be the ones that are probably going to be targeted over the next couple of turns, and they're going to be kind of what he's going to be prioritizing to kill off early. So now debating over the last spell. Slan casts Mystic Shield, going off on a 12, So Mystic Shield going on the Skink. So those Skinks are armed with Bolt Splitters and Bucklers, so they already have the +1 save. So that Mystic Shield is purely in there just to negate some of the rend coming out of Gary's army. So the Star Priest cast Hand of Glory on the Bastiladon. Gary failed to dispel it. Which means the Bastiladon is now re-rolling all ones to hit, which is very strong with a piece that can pump out as many attacks as it can. And the Star Priest also cast Control Fate on the Mortec Guard in the center there. So they're actually at -1 save as well. So you can really see where Henry is going to be probably putting most of his damage and putting most of his power in. So the Star Priest does do his buff on the Skinks for the mortal wounds in addition on the wound roll of a 6, with the Star Priest putting his command ability on the Bastiladon for the +1 to hit as we move into the movement phase. So you can see the Skinks are moving up quite aggressively, so it appears Henry he wants to kind of take the fight to Gary. He doesn't want to sit back and be tanking any more of those catapult shots because he knows he will be losing a lot of models as those shots come in. So setting up the Bastiladon there to target both the Mortec Guard and the Death Riders, so he's obviously planning on killing those Guard, but he's worried he's going to overkill them too much. So coming up with that backup plan for that Bastiladon's second round of shooting is probably a good idea. So you can see the Saurus moving up as well, just looking like they're just locking down that area. They're really not moving up to move off to engage. It looks like they're just sitting back to hold them. So the Skinks are going to open up in the movement phase. It's doing all-out attack on them to get them to hitting on 4s. And then wounding on 5s with the 6s doing a mortal wound in addition. So these shots are going into Archon. So with another 2 wounds on Archon, meaning 7 total, is really being chipped down. And then I believe the rest are going into the Mortec Guard in the center there with the -1 save. Big roll of 6s with 4 6s and 1 5 for the wound roll, or for the first round of wound rolls. So Skinks, when they're more than 15 strong, they get 2 shots each. So that block of 30 Skinks is pumping out 60 shots. Hitting on 4s, wounding on 5s isn't that great, but the 6s to wound doing mortal wounds in addition makes that unit very scary and very powerful piece once you've got all your buffs in place. So Gary losing 6 Mortec to the Skink shooting there. So that unit has taken quite a bit of damage so far. So most likely Henry will be opening up with the Bastildon into the Mortek Guard next to finish them off. Only because into Ossiarch BoneReapers, they do have quite a bit of healing and resurrecting of their models, so you really do need to kill the unit completely, otherwise there is a decent chance all the damage you've done is going to be taken off. So the Bastildon putting his shots into the Mortek Guard. Going to 3s, re-rolling 1s with all the buffs is very powerful. Wounding on 3s again, 2 damage shots. They're definitely, this guy's definitely putting a lot of damage down. Leaving the Mortek, only one of them alive, being the Hekatos. Now, the Thunder Lizard subfaction has an additional command ability that it can use, Trove of the Old Ones, where it can either have an Engine of the Gods use its Engine of the Gods ability twice, or at the end of the shooting phase, the Bastildon can fire again, and that's exactly what Henry's done. He's currently debating whether he is going to split shots, and how he's going to split shots. He's going to be targeting the Mortek just to take them completely off the table, stop Gary being able to bring them back. But it would be overkill to put the entire Bastildon into it. So he did try to sneak a couple of shots through to the Death Riders, but he maths it out correctly and manages to take the lone Mortek Guard off the table. Putting 2 wounds on the horses, 3 wounds on the horses, sorry, but all their saves hold through. So, the end of Henry's turn. He's had quite an aggressive turn. He's only really taken off one of the big threats on the table, but he has very, very much neutered Gary's hold over the center of the table. Going to the priority for turn 2, Henry wins the roll. Debates whether or not to take it or to pass it on to Gary. Looking at the table there, Gary can't really do too much if he does take it, but if Henry takes it, he can just continue and just double down on that damage that he pumped out last turn and really just trying to lock this game down. So he takes it and continues kind of his just all-in attack and assault from range and magic to try and just get rid of Gary before he can even see combat. So just checking now on the range on the pyramid, and whether or not the skinks, that blob of skinks there, is within range of the Star Priest buff, which is the mortal wounds on 6s. It was determined that they are. So Gary generating his his RDP points there, with Henry getting an additional CP for his heroic action. Now, after the game, Henry realised that he did not use the Slan, Starseer or Star Priest abilities to get additional command points for the first 2 turns. It doesn't seem like it's having a huge impact at the moment. He's still got some points to play with, so only sitting here with 1 this turn. So this is the turn that it probably would have had some effect there. So the battle tactic this turn is bring it down, and he's targeted Archon, so he's going to be trying to target him and take him off the table. Slan unleashes a big Comet's Call, which Archon stops well and truly with the double 6 there. Slan now just working through the rest of his spells, starting with a Stellar Tempest. And then he activates the pyramid. So the pyramid can be activated if there's a wizard or a priest inside it, a Seraphon wizard or a priest. And you can choose another piece of terrain on the table, and then you roll the dice and you can do D3 mortals to enemy units depending on what you roll. If the terrain piece is quite close, it works on a 2-up. If it's further away, it's a 4-up, and if it's really far away, it's on a 6-up. So Henry chose the large Chaos Temple in the middle of the table to get the 2-up, just to put another 2 mortal wounds on Archon, to really just try and lock that down. So that is his battle tactic, so it's probably the correct call to try and kill that. Unfortunately, the Slan does miscast and takes 2 mortal wounds before he can really ramp up a lot of the magical power that this list can put out. So so the Star Priest casting a Hand of Glory there to reroll 1s to hit. with Archon failing the Unbind, and Henry putting it on the Skinks before changing his mind and putting it on the Bastillodon again. So the Starseer casts Control Fate again. Doesn't appear to have picked a target for it. And then his Skink Priest uses his command ability on the Bastillodon again for the +1 to hit, whilst the Star Priest puts his Serpent Staff buff on the big blob of Skinks in the center of the table. So the Skink Priest did a heal as well to try and heal back the Slan, healing the 2 mortals that he took from his miscast earlier. So not a huge hero phase for Henry. Definitely could have been bigger, but definitely could have been a lot worse. So he's set up very well to kind of continue his shooting dominance. And you can see here he needs to kill Archon. So those Skinks are fully committing to that, moving up into that Chaos Temple in the center of the table there. So moving them across. It will be interesting to see if he splits shots or if he just goes all in on Archon just to guarantee that threat is removed. Because if this doesn't work, he doesn't really have too much else that he can do to that. So, especially when he is committing the Bastillodon elsewhere, it looks like that Bastillodon is going to be trying to lock down those Death Riders and take them off the table as well. So, some quick measuring from the 9 inches there. You can see that Henry is bringing on the first unit of his Chameleon Skinks. So with those Mortec missing from the center of the table, there's a nice big gap there that he can get his Chameleons in. They're on the objective, and it's just some additional shots that he can put out to just lock Gary down. But also there's Chameleons in his face now. He's going to have to deal with them before he can get any further across the table. So Henry committing all his Skinks to shooting Archon, so 60 shots, 4s and 5s, but 6s to wound, do a mortal in addition. So, and Archon dropping on the first batch of Skinks from the mortal wounds. So probably a bit of overkill there by Henry, but when it comes to battle tactics, you can't mess around. You can't risk not scoring them. So Bastillodon targeting the Death Riders, doing some damage there. Decent roll from both players. Henry putting the damage out and Gary being able to save it, with 2 Death Riders going down and some wounds on the 3rd one. So the Chameleons shooting the catapult. So Chameleons do 6s Chameleons do mortals on 6s to hit. So putting a point on the catapult, but none of the normal shots get through. So, and this is where Henry regrets not having those extra command points. Otherwise, the Bastillodon would have been able to fire again and probably take those Death Riders completely off the table. Very much securing that right-hand side of the screen for him, his left-hand flank. So scoring 6 points this turn, holding 1, holding 2, holding more than his opponent, as well as completing his battle tactic and then also killing the monster, taking him to 10 victory points to Gary's 5 before Gary starts his turn 2. So Gary electing not to do a heroic action this turn, once again not having anything that is actually usable. So using the Bone Type Nexus to do a mortal wound on the Bastillodon. He can just see it from the terrain, does a mortal wound. Henry does have a ward save from the Astrolith but fails, doing 1 mortal into to the Bastiladon, so that's quite important to crack its armor. The Bastiladon starts on a 1+ save, so those extra couple of mortal wounds at early in the game very much give a better chance later in the game of being able to take it down and getting around that incredible armor save. So the battle tactic that Gary chose was Conquer on the center objective on his side of the table. As the Chameleons have taken it off him, he can now take it back. So debating the best way to do that, he's got the Catapult, he's got the Leech Cavalos, he's got Catacross himself, he's got the Death Riders. He definitely can put the damage out there, it's just what is the best option to kill them and then also get something on the objective. So he maneuvers the Catapult around behind the terrain piece to give Catacross the space to be able to get through. The Death Rider's moving around slightly just to screen out that objective, because he does know that Henry has a second unit of Chameleons, and then also opening up that gap for the Leech Cavalos to be able to get through to push up and take out those Chameleons. So the other unit of Mortek just milling around, really securing his hold on that bottom left-hand objective, making sure that there's no chance from a sneaky Chameleons to go in and steal it. So moving into the shooting phase. So the only shooting that Gary has is the Mortek Crawler, and it still has one special shot left. So this special shot is rolling 2 dice. You need to roll equal to or greater than the enemy model's wound characteristic, and you can once again remove from the table. So he tries it on the Slan, needing an 8, but unfortunately fails. So the Slan is still on the table, and Gary kind of forfeits his shooting phase. So Catacross going for the charge there, rolling the Snake Eyes and not being able to get in. So Gary left with just the Leech Cavalos being able to get in. So unfortunately he couldn't get Catacross further up the field to threaten that center, only with the Leech Cavalos into the Chameleons. So the Chameleons are outside of terrain, so their special rule is if they are within an inch or inside terrain, they have a 4-up ward, which makes them a lot more survivable. Otherwise, they have just a plain 6-up save, which, unfortunately for Henry, the Leech Cavalos' rend just goes straight through. So, Gary coming in, killing one with impact hits, starting his attack run there. Not a great roll from him, but still doing the damage. Oh, still not a great roll. Six attacks from the horse, hitting on 2s and wounding on 3s, do 4 damage to kill the rest of the Chameleon Skinks. Now, one thing that Henry's list does have as part of the Coalesce sub-faction of Seraphon is their Scaly Skin. So what that does is that reduces all damage that they take, the damage characteristics of weapons by 1. So all the damage 2 weapons become damage 1, damage 3 becomes damage 2, damage D3 becomes D3 minus 1, which makes them very survivable against models like the Leech Cavalos and Catacross and the Mortek Crawler that rely on not as many attacks, but the higher quality, more damaging attacks. So Gary finishing his turn there, completing his battle tactic, getting control of that objective back, to go to 9 victory points there. So Henry winning the priority roll, choosing to take priority, and Gary burning the objective next to the pyramid in the top right hand corner there. Not willing to kind of go through the Bastiladon to have to claim it and then also fight the 4 heroes in the pyramid. So Gary generating additional RDP. And Henry remembering that he can generate his extra CPs as well. So generating 1 extra, and then also using his Warlord once per game extra CP as well. The heroic action he chose was heroic leadership. Once again, it failed. So he is suffering for CPs at the moment. And he chose broken ranks as his battle tactic, choosing the Cavalos Death Riders that are quite damaged at the moment. So only 2 of them left, and likely we will see the Bastildon going into that and taking them off the table. So Henry's got quite a few options. Gary still has some fairly high priority targets for him to deal with. Catacross and the Catapult are both up the back. The Slan opening up with a Comet's Call. Gary chose Heroic Willpower as his heroic action, letting him have 1 Dispel this turn. Slan doing some mortals with Comet's Call onto the Leech Cavalos, making the terrain next to it explode, doing some damage to Catacross, the Leech Cavalos, and the Mortek Crawler as well. So spreading that damage out, giving Gary plenty of opportunities to heal, but having to choose very carefully what he is healing. So Hand of Glory from the Star Priest goes off on the Bastildon again. And the Starseer doing Control Fate on the Leech Cavalos in the center of the table. The Bastildon gets the Serpent Staff ability, which is 6's to wound, do a mortal wound in addition, as well as the Skink Priest's buff for the +1 to hit as well. So Henry's just explaining a rule to Gary now, just so that everyone is fully across what models are capable of, and what is okay and what is allowed. So the Skink Priest fails his prayer, takes a mortal wound, and then we move into the movement phase. So the Bastildon moving up to really kind of cement that right-hand flank. It looks like he's setting him up to also be able to target the Catapult and the Leech Cavalos, checking as well to make sure he's staying within 12 of that pyramid to be able to get all those buffs that are coming out of it. The Skinks are moving around across back into the center, moving kind of more in range of the pyramid, but kind of just locking down that gap, making that anything Gary tries to push through have to go through those bodies to be able to get through. So the Saurus are now pushing up, just to lock off that objective and stop any sneaky maneuvers coming from Henry's right hand flank, the left hand side of the screen. And as it's turn 3, any other reserves or reserves units need to come down. So measuring out where those chameleons can go. You would see him there using a 9-inch widget to confirm that they are outside of 9, and it is valid placement. That's one of our branded widgets, and you can purchase that from our online store. Get in touch with us on Facebook if you would like any of the merch that you see in any of these games, and we'll be happy to work with you. So starting off the shooting phase, Henry starts with the Skinks in the pyramid, with the Starseer, the Star Priest, and the Skink Priest all having guns. And that -1 from Control Fate really coming into play here, with lots of Rend 1 attacks coming in, going up to Rend 2, making them a lot more respectable in terms of dealing damage to a high armoured army like the Ossiarch BoneReapers. So Henry opening up now with the Skinks, and you can just see the volume of shots that are coming out of that unit. 60 shots at naturally as 5s and 5s isn't the greatest, but if you throw enough dice at a target, you will end up doing what you need to do. And you can see there Henry just rolling bucket loads of dice to be able to push this damage through. So from 60 shots, there are 6 damage going through, 2 failed saves, 2 deathless saves, resulting in 2 damage actually going through to the Cavalos. So the Chameleon's now targeting the Cavalos as well, failing to do any work, but the 6s to wound is a lot of, the mortals on the 6s to hit is a lot of their work that they get done. So Henry's still with the Bastiladon, left to shoot, and it going into the Death Riders. So putting 4 damage, putting 4 wounds on the Death Riders at Rend 1, 2 going through, with 4 damage in total going through. So the remaining Death Rider on 2 wounds there. So Henry debating whether or not he can afford to split the shots from the Bastiladon. He does need to kill that last Death Rider as part of his battle tactic, and he is only slightly ahead on points. So going for the big play might be the choice here, but most likely he will end up just putting primarily most of it onto the Death Riders. Yes. So putting 6 shots into the Death Rider, and killing the Death Rider, with 3 shots going to the Cavalos, and all 3 coming up as 1 to wound. So that is his shooting phase. In addition, in that turn, the Slan tried to use his artifact, the Fusel of Conflagration, that he needs to take as part of the Thunder Lizard subfaction, and it failed on a 1. So breaking and not being usable again. Had that worked, on a 4-up it does D3 mortal wounds, and on a 6 it does D6. So potentially quite a damaging artifact, but not in this game. So Henry, you can see Henry there charging the Skink, so he really wants to take that Leech Cavalos off the table and put just that wall of Skinks back in front of Gary, really locking him down back on his side of the table, keeping that pressure off and allowing him to just kind of continue the magical and ranged onslaught that he's dropping out. So not letting Gary play his game and forcing him to play Henry's. So piling in all the Skinks there. Once again, you can see Henry using a 3-inch widget. We do have our own branded widgets, so you can purchase them from our Facebook page. Please get in touch. As this is our first video as well, please like, comment and subscribe. Let us know down below what you liked or didn't like about the videos. Am I pushing the merch too much? Am I not pushing it enough? Let us know. It's the only way we're going to get better. We're hoping to do a lot more of these, but we definitely want input from the community about what you guys want to see, because there's no point doing videos if no one's going to watch them. So you can see here Henry now rolling his attacks from the Skinks that charged in. Once again, he's just throwing the weight of dice at that Leech Cavalos. They're not quality attacks. They don't have good rend. They don't hit on good numbers. They don't have good numbers. They don't have good damage numbers. But he's got a lot. So in the end, putting through the 1 damage that he needed to be able to kill off that Leech Cavalos. In addition to killing off that Leech Cavalos, he's now been able to push up and push onto that objective to get Skinks on there to be able to take that back off Gary again. So scoring 6 victory points this turn, holding 1, holding 2, holding more, and then achieving his battle tactic with a monster, meaning Henry's scoring going to 16 up against Gary's 9 halfway through turn 3. So Gary now debating what to do, loading up on RDP, throwing out Catacross's command ability for the +1 save, pretty much army wide at this stage. And Gary debating which battle tactic to use. He's still got a couple of options here. He still could possibly do Ferocious Advance. He puts another mortal wound on the Bastiladon with the Bone type Nexus. Once again, just going for that armor cracking, trying to limit and make it easier to kill off that Distillodon later in the game when he can put something into it. And he ended up choosing Broken Ranks for the battle tactic on the unit of skinks in front of him. So going to focus his damage and attacks on them to try and take out that big unit there. That is a fairly large chunk of Henry's damage output, so taking out the Steg early in the game and then taking those skinks off the table will very much limit how Henry can respond to his remaining units. So the catapult targeting these skinks, putting through 2, both of them going through with no saves, and then that Scaly Skin coming into play there, reducing that damage down by 1. Henry taking off those skinks at the front to make that Catacross charge slightly more difficult, but he just makes it in with a 6. So there's a big unit of skinks. Catacross has just charged into them. So Catacross using RDP to give himself an extra attack. So being able to put all of his attacks into the skinks and trying to take them off the table and achieve that battle tactic and kind of get some agency back in this game. So Henry's Scaly Skin once it gets coming into play to reduce the damage coming in, reducing 3 damage down to 2 damage and keeping that extra skink alive. Not a great roll from Gary's next attack. Lots of misses, lots of failed wounds. 2 more skinks dropping down with Gary with 8 attacks for his Naderite daggers and dueling blades. 2s and 3s, we're expecting this to do quite a bit of damage. Not the greatest roll, only putting 3 wounds on the skinks to kill 3 more, so only killing 13 skinks in total. Henry deciding to pile in the skinks fully to try and get them back onto the objective. It looks like he's hoping to win priority and trying to keep kind of pushing across and keep his models in Gary's deployment zone there, rather than letting Gary kind of moving up the board uncontested. So Henry confirming that he's still got more than 15 skinks, so they all get the extra attack. So once again, just trying to put through a volume of attacks to get some damage through against Catacross. He does have an exceptional save and a deathless as well, so it will be very difficult for these skinks to put any reasonable damage on him, resulting in 3 wounds at no rend on Catacross, and Gary makes all the saves, so Catacross is unworried about those skinks. So Henry rolling a 2 there for the battle shock test and having 10 skinks run as well. The unit did remain on the table, so Gary does not achieve his battle tactic. He does reclaim that objective, so he just scoring the 2 points for holding 1, 3 points, sorry, holding 1, holding 2, and holding more now that he has burnt one of Henry's back objectives. And going into priority for turn 4. So Catacross now sitting in the center of the table. That's a huge threat. Henry really needs to focus kind of everything he's got at it to be able to deal with him. But focusing everything on Catacross means everything else is kind of going unmolested. So Henry winning the priority roll there, choosing to take it, believing that he's going to try and deal with Catacross this turn. Choosing Conquer and choosing the uncontested objective in the bottom right hand corner. it looks like he will just be moving the chameleons onto it to take that from Gary. Interesting play. He could have gone Slay the Warlord if he's planning on putting everything into Catacross. Or he might be looking to put some damage elsewhere and leaving Catacross for next turn, softening him up a bit this turn, and then trying to take him out in the final turn of the game. So confirming Catacross is within range of the models in the temple, so very much looks like everything is going to be focused on the Mortarch in the center of the table at the moment. So getting an extra CP there from the Slan Starseer and Star Priest. So Henry now just debating the best way to kind of achieve what he wants to achieve this turn. Does he go for Catacross? Does he go all on that? Does he maneuver and position better for the final turn and just try and lock down this game so that Gary can't take it back? Making the terrain piece next to the catapult and Catacross explode, doing some mortals to each of them. The Slan throwing out a Comet's Call, going off on an 8. So Henry chose the Hunter's Steed this turn as an asterism. That gives his entire army +1 to run and charge rolls. Possibly a mistake, with the Slan failing to get through some of his spells, with Catacross managing to make the Unbind. We will see. So the Slan's final spell, so Control Fate on Catacross, Hand of Glory on the Bastiladon again. Nope, Hand of Glory, yes, Hand of Glory on the Bastiladon. And the Slan turning himself into a monster to get that monstrous reaction and counters 5 on objectives. So interesting use of spells there. Using the Star Priest's ability on the Bastiladon again, and also putting the Skink Priest buff on the Bastiladon like we've seen previously. So once again, just turning that Bastiladon just into the gun platform that it can be, and he's just going to be unleashing that into most likely Catacross. He does have a line on the catapult down the back there, and he might be thinking to take that out to be able to just cement down that side so that really Gary just has Catacross, only has Catacross left. So pushing up the Skinks quite aggressively into Gary's deployment zone there. Not using them to screen out, which is an interesting play, but using them to put pressure on his backline and force either Catacross to stop advancing and to go back and deal with them, or for those Mortec to come forward and kind of move off that objective there. So he might be looking to do a sneaky play with the Saurus, or he might just be trying to put that extra bit of pressure on Gary in these final turns just to cement that lead. So the Bastiladon moving up slightly, staying within the 12 of the pyramid there. You can see him check, and you can see those buffs behind the Bastiladon. So the Slan now is looking to move. He might be moving back to get back on that terrain piece, or he might be moving up fully to either screen out or commit to Catacross. Saurus are moving around just to secure those objectives there. The Astrolith jumping out of the pyramid there to spread his aura just slightly further up the field, making sure that everyone is still benefiting from that 6-up ward save, and that additional range to casting. So Henry's starting the shooting phase there. So the Bastiladon starting out targeting the crawler. So Henry does use his Triumph this turn to get the Bastiladon to winning on 2s, which is a big play, a very big play. It's a once per game ability, and it's definitely putting the damage out with killing the catapult with a round of shooting. So with just that chip damage over the course of the game, being able to just take it to within where he can just kind of one round it down. The Chameleon's opening up on Catacross with one save, and then 4 mortals, putting some more damage on the Mortarch himself. Henry now confirming the Pyramid's in range, and it appears he'll be opening up with all these skink heroes as well. So putting more and more damage on Catacross, just chipping him down. The Control Fate spell here is doing amazing work with just that -1 armor. Taking all these Rend 1 shots up to Rend 2 is huge against Catacross himself. So using the Thunder Lizard command ability to make the Bastiladon shoot again, going into Catacross. So they're talking now just about the timing of this ability and how it works, where it has to be used at the end of the shooting phase, and just the benefits and downsides of such a restriction, and how that affects the decision making that the players go into during the game. So putting another 7 wounds on Catacross and 2 additional mortal wounds. So taking another 7 damage. So confirming that Catacross has 5 health left. Henry's now debating whether or not he commits a slam to melee to try and just finish him off. It's a very risky play. The Slan is a monster, so you will get a monstrous reaction which can be stomped for D3 mortals. But even doing 3 mortals, he still needs to be able to put two wounds on with his melee, and the Slans are not known for their melee prowess. So he might be going for the big play here. It's a risky play. If he doesn't go for it, then Catacross can either go after the Slan or the Bastiladon. Gets the charge, and he takes the charge. So moving in such a way to keep Catacross away from the skinks there. Doing the monstrous rampage, choosing Stomp, rolling the 1, so no mortals. So the Slan now needs to put out 5 wounds onto a Catacross to try and put him in the ground. So doing all-out attack on the Slan as well. So really trying to get that damage through. Hitting on 3s. And wounding on 3s. Putting 4 through. 4 wounds. Not enough, unfortunately. Just putting 1 more damage onto Catacross. So Catacross remaining on 4 wounds, taking 16, and then Catacross retaliating with his attacks because he is so damaged. Some of his assistants have been killed off, meaning he gets more attacks with his personal weapons, his spear and his shield, and hitting on 2s, rerolling 1s. Means that he can put a lot of damage out, and the Slan is not that survivable without any artifacts or the Saurus Guard to really keep him alive. So the Slan goes down. It was a big play from Henry to hopefully pull that off, but unfortunately it didn't work. So Henry scoring another 6 victory points for this turn. Another 5 victory points this turn. Gary scoring the 1 for killing the monster that is the Slan. So Henry going to an 8-point victory, 8 victory point lead. Doing another mortal wound to the Bastiladon with the Bone Type Nexus there for Gary. And choosing bring it down and targeting the Bastiladon, and going Finest Hour on Catacross as well to kind of keep him surviving. He knows he knows he will need to tank the Unleash Hell from the Bastiladon, who is still fully buffed, so it is a bit of a risk there. Catacross did heal himself, so now he's got 7 wounds remaining, but that Bastiladon can really punch out the damage. So Catacross advancing up into the center of the table, and they're debating at the moment what is the best play. Does Henry go for the Unleash Hell, or does he go for the redeploy on the Bastiladon? He eventually decides to go for the redeploy whilst Gary moves the Mortec up at the same time to save time. So he chooses to redeploy the Bastiladon, because as much as he would like to do Unleash Hell, it's definitely the safer play to redeploy and just deny that charge outright, especially rolling a 5. Pulling him back, making it very difficult for Gary to be able to achieve his battle tactic now, and really just cementing it in. Gary rolling the 10 for the charge for Catacross, and Henry just confirming that no, he is too far away. That redeploy really saving that Bastiladon there. Now just debating where is the best spot for Catacross to go, where he can actually still be able to engage that Bastiladon. Debating whether or not it is the right play to put him in, and eventually deciding that locking down that Bastiladon and keeping him there, going for hopefully the double, is probably the play here to kill that and be able to try and reclaim some of these objectives at the back here to get that bonus point. So the Mortec charging into the Skinks at the back as well, so moving off that objective. Moving off that objective slightly, so that might be the play that Henry was looking for, before he retreated his Saurus there and decided to not engage as solidly, and kind of shift his focus onto clearing his left flank, the right hand side of the screen there. So Henry going for the stomp with the Bastiladon, putting a couple of mortals on Catacross again to chip him down. Yeah, unfortunately Catacross does not have large ranged melee weapons, so was unable to reach the Bastiladon. So he will be unleashing all his attacks into the Chameleon Skinks. Now they are within an inch of terrain, which means they do get a 4-up ward, so they might take a little bit more killing than was initially planned, or they all get wiped out in one swipe. So there is 1 Chameleon remaining, and Catacross still has 2 weapons left, so Gary doing some additional mortals there, Henry being able to save them, and Henry failing the ward save for the final Chameleon going down. So Henry using the Skinks to do some damage to the Mortec Guard. It's very unlikely that he'll be able to do anything meaningful with them, and failing to do any wounds at all only just kind of proves that whilst the Skinks are a huge damage potential, they really need all the different buffs in place to be able to reach that potential. And now the Mortec retaliating here. And killing all of the Skigs in a single round of combat. And Gary just confirming that Mortek did manage to get within 6 and did reclaim that central objective. But still on doing combat now, putting some more damage on Catacross and keeping him nice and low. So Gary did not achieve his battle tactic this turn again, and scoring only 2 objectives means he only scores another 2 points, meaning Henry is going into the final turn with a 6-point lead. But Gary does win the priority for the final turn. So, debating which battle tactic he uses, Gary chooses to go for Savage Spearhead. So, you need 2 units wholly within your opponent's territory to achieve that battle tactic. And he's got 2 units remaining. So, we'll see if he can manage to run those Mortek into the other side of the table there, whereas Catacross will need to pile in. So Catacross healing with his heroic action, and Henry getting an additional CP on his Astrolith. So Gary's spending an RDP to get an extra 3, rolling a run to try and get the Mortek Guard moving as far up as possible. And you can see there Henry using one of our new branded widgets on the table there, just some shameless self-promotion, whilst Gary runs the Mortek to try and get them entirely within Henry's deployment zone. Territory, not deployment zone. So running them all up, there is the offhanded comment that he doesn't actually need to get them all into the territory, because he could move them out of coherency and then they would need to be removed. So they discuss that, and I believe Henry is checking the rules at the moment too on whether or not that is allowed, whilst Gary kind of moves them up. And so Gary moving his models up, moving them out of coherency, not caring that they'll be removed, because then the remaining models will be entirely in Henry's territory. But just quickly checking the rules on coherency to confirm whether or not that works, and it turns out that it doesn't. You're not allowed to move your models out of coherency. But luckily they confirmed that all the models would have been able to make it into the territory previously. So all the Mortek moving into Henry's territory. So the battle tactic just relying on Catacross being able to pile in, which he should be able to do. Nothing in the shooting phase, nothing in the charge phase. So Henry choosing to do Stomp as his monstrous rampage, and once again rolling a 1 for the 1 for it to go off. So just confirming whether or not Catacross can pile in far enough to make it, and it's confirmed that he can. So Gary achieves his battle tactic, assuming Catacross doesn't go down to the Bastillodon this turn in combat. So Henry spending his command point for all-out defense to take the Bastillodon back to a 1+ save. So Henry rolling a 5 and a 3 there for his armor save. Catacross attacking with a Rend 3 weapon. Now Rend in AoS 3 does not work like AoS 2, and the -3 takes that down and takes putting some damage on the Bastillodon. So the rest of the attacks coming in from Catacross now. So with some exploding hits there, looking to put some more damage on that Bastillodon. And Henry retaliating with the Bastillodon now, still with all his buffs. Needing 2s to hit, 3s to wound. Putting 6 damage onto Catacross, and taking him to 17 damage taken with 3 health remaining. So Gary completes his turn, achieving his battle tactic, holding 1, holding 2, getting 4 points, taking him to 19 points for the game. Henry's already on 21, so Henry has taken this game out, but playing it out to see what he can achieve in the final turn. So it looks like he's going for Slay the Warlord, targeting Catacross. He's done Finest Hour on the Astrolith Bearer. Catacross going for the Heroic Recovery and recovering 1. So Henry needs to do 4 wounds to Catacross to achieve his battle tactic, but already having won the game means that it is superfluous, but just for completionist's sake. So if you enjoyed this game, please like and subscribe to the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave us a comment down below. We definitely know we can do better. There's tons of other channels out there doing amazing content, and we would love to be as good as some of them in the future. But we need your input to be able to tell us what we need to do. What do you guys like? What do you want to see? And what don't you want to see as well? So let us know in the comments down below. Follow us on Facebook. We try and post up at least once or twice a week, be it more battle reports, blog articles, or even just our weekly work in progress pictures. So definitely reach out to us there. Getting back to the game, Henry's just kind of securing everything, setting up all the different buffs, putting an Arcane Bolt on the Star Priest, putting the buffs out on the Bastillodon again, just setting up just to finish off Catacross and put that final nail in his coffin for once and for all. So thank you for watching, guys. We really enjoyed playing this game. We had a great time. We definitely want to be doing it again, but like I said, reach out, let us know what you guys want to see, and we'll see if we can make it happen. So we definitely want to make this a regular thing, but we need the community support, because without a community there is no game. So we're very lucky in Queensland to have such a great community and have lots of other content creators that we can collaborate with. So we'll hope to get some of them on the channel at some point. Otherwise, we'll wait for Gary to roll some dice. And there he goes.